Eva Durantz. I'm currently president of the Penticton Urban Agriculture Association, or PUAA. It's a short form. And I and Julius Broomfield from Naramata had a brilliant idea to start the organization about 4 years ago. And we had our first meeting in March of 2010. Since then, we've had 2 boards, and we've done a strategic plan, and we've set up our Center for Urban Agriculture downtown Penticton. So we're reasonably pleased with how things are going. We have 51 members now. Our main idea in starting PUAA was to have an organization that was concerned about food security and local food production in an overall sense. And we also had been hoping to be something of an, not an umbrella organization for others, but as a kind of a focus for all the groups that are concerned about the local agriculture, local food production, and food security in general for this area. That hasn't happened yet, but perhaps in future that will. But our main aim was to promote more local food production and marketing, and to support farmers of all kinds, but especially the younger farmers and people who want to get into farming, and the organic farmers, to make their, really to make their bottom line better, to have people buying more locally produced food, and therefore to promote greater security for food in the area. And I come from a farming background, so I'm very concerned about farmers and
Sure.
the farmers surviving and young farmers coming on, because the age of our farming population is creeping up rather alarmingly. But Julius was particularly interested in that aspect of it, but it's a very difficult one, because land is expensive in the valley, and there's not really a lot of specific training for agriculture. The local college doesn't have any programs in agriculture. Kind of another goal, which is to promote better food and more locally produced food for people of low income. So that's really a core. It has become the core of PUAA in the last couple of years. And so we give courses from March right through to October on various aspects, a couple times a month at least, on various aspects of gardening. So that's a big part of our goal. And second one of our goals, which is really being covered by other organizations, we're glad to see, is having people learn how to cook and preserve food. And the Salvation Army has a community kitchen. The Boys and Girls Club, I believe, has one. I think the Multicultural organization has one. There's 3 or 4 in town anyway, and the Shatford Centre is now trying to get a commercial kitchen, and part of that would be to give courses in food preparation and food preservation. So one of our goals kind of got taken care of by other people. A third goal was the one that I mentioned in the overall one, which is to promote local purchase of food, of locally grown food, and thereby to help support farmers. And certainly the farmers market is a big part of that, and they're very supportive of what we're doing too. But also that would include things like getting the local grocery stores to stock and label at least BC grown food, which there used to be a much better program for than there is now, and especially really locally grown, like the valley. So that was a third one of our goals, and again it's one that we haven't been able to do much on because we just haven't had enough people. There's so many segments to agriculture in this valley. I guess you almost have to take it segment by segment. Even if you look at the organic growers, and this has the highest concentration of organic growers of any place in Canada, and I think they're doing reasonably well because the organic market is really picking up. And obviously the vineyards are, seem to be doing quite well. And I think that probably the orchard industry is having the hardest time because there's just so much competition from China now and the States. And I mean, it simply isn't a level playing field when you're talking about Washington apples and growing them in the Okanagan, because water is so much cheaper down there, for one thing. I grew up in the food industry, and people get upset about the some of the marketing boards. First of all, they think that they're paying for them. Well, they're not as such. It's not government money that's paying for them. It's the growers themselves that are paying for the marketing boards. But we're small players, no matter how you look at it, and it's not a level playing field when you're competing with the huge industries in the States in particular. So, I'm fully in support of the marketing boards, because it's the only way that Canadian producers can get a decent living out of it. And this has nothing to do with C.URB or PUAA, but there's a point that people don't realize, I think, for example, in the poultry industry, because there's the marketing boards and the poultry growers know they're going to get a decent price for their birds, they can afford to take the birds out when they're, when one flock is finished and they're off to market. They can leave the houses empty for a couple weeks, clean them out properly, and then they don't have the problems of disease being passed on from flock to flock. And so they use almost no antibiotics, whereas in the States they just keep shoving them through and they're just full of antibiotics.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a big issue.
It's a huge issue, and the same with the dairy industry. It just allows them to be more careful with how they're producing their food.
I'm Catherine McCourt, and I'm the Secretary-Treasurer at the present time of the Penticton Urban Agriculture Association. And I'd like to talk about our central project at the moment, which is C.URB. And C.URB stands for the Center for Urban Agriculture. It's located in Penticton, in between Backstreet Boulevard and Ellis Streets. And it's in its third year of operation now in 2013. And we have, I think, 20 beds going, raised beds because of the nature of the land that we're working on. Everything had to be above the ground surface. We teach classes in all areas of gardening, from an introductory course on organic gardening that's taught by one of the Costin organic growers every year and is always very popular, to short courses on planting potatoes and raspberries and other perennial food crops, to bedding plants out, growing vegetables in containers, putting the garden to bed in the fall, and how to harvest and preserve, or at least store, fall vegetables such as squash and so on. And finally planting garlic for the next year's season. And in order to teach those kinds of courses, we've been teaching 2 a month over the growing season, we have to grow produce. And so the produce that we grow is donated to either the food bank or the Suppeteria. And speaking of the Suppeteria, we partner with them in that we collect their kitchen scraps and turn that into compost at C.URB, and then donate produce back to them as it's appropriate. And that's been working very well for just about a year now. And we also then teach courses, or are able to. We run a very efficient composting system, if I may say so. It turns out pretty good compost, and we're equipped to teach courses in that as well. Our final course this year was run by Cameron Bond of the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen, and he taught his favorite course in vermiculture, keeping worms at home in order to eat up the kitchen scraps. And that wound up our season. All of the projects and the gardening and the weeding and so on are run by volunteers, and of course we can always use more hands on weeding, and irrigation is by volunteer, and so is harvesting. All of those areas are open to participation by members, and we encourage that because we always have a lot of fun when we do get together and have a work party and get things done. Everything we do at C.URB is a learning experience for ourselves because it's a different growing area than we personally have in our homes, and of course there's so many microclimates in the South Okanagan that every little area grows things differently. But also for members of the Urban Agriculture Association, many of whom are non-gardeners or novice gardeners but are interested in learning how to garden. And of course our courses are open to the public, and we bring people in who've never put their hands on the soil before and maybe not inclined to but want to know a little bit more about how growing takes place. Our courses are currently free for members of PUAA and available to people who don't want to become members at a very nominal fee. So everybody's welcome to participate. We doubled our course numbers this year, and I'm hoping that we will increase the number of courses and garden beds again in 2014. Yes, we had a bit of a struggle in the beginning in 2010 to find a location for the teaching gardens. Principally, I suppose, because we were looking for a piece of arable land that we could grow in, and we just didn't find that, as there's very little available around the Penticton area. So we did a switch of thinking and were able to obtain the lot where the old Nanaimo Hall and several other storage buildings were situated. We couldn't garden in that soil because it had been a parking lot and there were other contaminants possibly in the soil that we didn't know what that soil contained. So we've gardened in soil from a variety of donated sources. We've been fortunate, the city and others, as I said earlier, and have raised it all above the level of the gravel. And the gravel actually makes a good working surface, and the mulch that we've acquired on top of that is even more comfortable. And the soil that the vegetables are growing in is good quality gardening soil without any problems to worry about. And that concept of gardening on any usable space in a raised bed is spreading like wildfire. There's a movable gardens program in Vancouver that's popping up all over the place with the same kinds of beds we're using. So, and several groups and individuals in Penticton have actually bought our gardening frames with the idea of putting up a garden in other poor soil or unusable areas in Penticton or on their backyard pavement either. We're looking at a possibility of a set of beds on a concrete patio as one of our upcoming projects. So the ability to grow more of our own food locally is much greater than we might realize. Even in containers on a north-facing balcony, production of some food crops is possible. It would be nice to see the gardens expanded if we had more hands to maintain the beds. We're looking at a project for 2014 that may possibly achieve that for us. It would be nice to take the gardening project out into such schools as we're interested. There's an exciting project that originated at UBC and is now growing in Vernon that could be happening in Penticton that would get kids growing some of their own food and learning how to do that process. It would be great to be able to partner with other organizations who were caring for people and needed more produce. All of those things could be brought about if we had more people with the appropriate skill sets volunteering to assist with increasing local food security.